Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told how to voice the radio. So today we need to take a look at which cards you need to be picking up from Twilight Masquerade. And remember the way we do this on this channel when we do the buy list. I'm not trying to predict what decks are going to be good. I've literally told you what decks are going to be good. I've told you about the best new decks from this set. I've made that video. What we're looking at here is the cards you need to have ready in your binder to play what you want to play. So you might be looking at Temporal Masquerade and going, Wassy, I really like Temporal Masquerade. I think I'm going to play that. Brilliant. If you're going to play that, you need a play set of that card. If you're not going to play that, you don't need any of that card. And I don't want to tell you to go and buy a playset of a card that you might never actually end up playing with. So something like Dragapult is not going to be hideously cheap on release. So I don't think it's a great idea to go and pick up a playset of those unless you want to be playing Dragapult, in which case obviously go straight ahead. For me personally, I'm picking up a playset of Thwackey and Diplin, because that is a deck I am very excited about and I think is going to end up being really quite good. But unless you're going to play Thwackey Diplin, it's not really worth picking up any of those cards. So we're going to be looking up cards that are not necessarily deck specific, ones that you need to have lying around, the kind of cards where if you decide to change deck last minute at a tournament, you're never struggling to find Temporal Masquerade. What you're struggling to find is all the random trainer cards that no one's got. So with that in mind, we're going to start off with Ariados, not the most exciting Pokemon out there. It's got an ability that increases the retreat cost of evolution Pokemon of your opponent by 1. But I think you probably need some of these because you know what? There is every possibility that this ends up becoming a useful card with a bunch of random Pokemon. It is the kind of card which is unassuming for now, and then you turn around and actually it's really good. You wish you had a few. That's where I come in. Now, Sunflora is a very interesting, very useful Pokemon. That's the one whereby, well, you do 60 damage for each fire energy attached to all your opponent's Pokemon. It's a hard Charizard counter. It is a stage 1 that hard counters Charizard. Simple as that. For that reason, I think you might need some of these. Illumise is a weird one. I think you'll probably only ever need one of these, and it's a common, so you'll probably have one of these. But the thing about Illumise is that if you go second during your first turn, you can shuffle one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and all cards attached to it into their deck. It's actually a very useful Pokemon that can really frustrate your opponent, and I think it's one you need to have to hand. Now, Milotic is another Pokemon I think you need a couple copies of lying around because it's got another very, very nice ability. Most of the Pokemon, that's what we're looking at here. And what we've got from Milotic is the ability Mentally Calm. Your opponent's Pokemon in play and all cards attached to them cannot be put into your opponent's hand. Any deck that wants to pick up their Pokemon, and there are a bunch out there, are going to be stopped by Milotic. This one is one to bear in mind. Now, Frostlass is one we've all seen and thought was good. The ability says that you put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon that has an ability, other than Frostlass, during Pokemon Checkup. It is going to be good with a bunch of different Pokemon. And again, like I keep saying, this is exactly the kind of Pokemon you're going to go to a tournament and you're going to need to find 4 copies of this at short notice, not be able to find it. But hopefully you listen to the buy list and you're ready. This is literally the list of cards that I pick up. And then I go and pick up all the main attackers for the decks I want to be playing, which incidentally does include Temporal Masquerade and Thwackey and Diplin. Now, Luxray EX I don't think is a Pokemon you can just ignore and buy if you want to play the deck, because it's got Piercing Gaze for 2 colourless energy, 120, look at your opponent's hand, discard a card you find there. This isn't a Pokemon which is limited to Luxray decks. This is going to be played in a bunch of decks, and I think you need to be ready. Morpeko's got the great ability Snack Seek. Lets you look at the top card of your deck and you can either discard it or leave it where it is. For anything that looks at the top X cards of your deck and finds something, it's great. For any decks that like playing from the discard and want to discard specific things, it's great. It is a very, very useful Pokemon. Now, Iron Thorns EX is a weird one to me. I do think you probably should have some of these lying around, but then by the same token, it might be one of those you only ever play in a deck. as in an Ironthorn specific deck. Obviously, all going to be played in a deck. The thing is, it turns off abilities of non-future Pokemon. I can't really imagine playing a future deck without Ironthorns at some point. So the question is, do you want 4 of these, or do you want 1 or 2 as a tech? And that's a question for you. And while we're talking about Paradox EXs, how about Screamtail? Now, this may well be one you only ever actually need a single copy of, but this is one I think you do need lying around. Because you've got the attack Scream, single colourless energy, and you can only use it going second and only on your first turn, but it stops your opponent playing supporters. So they go first, can't play supporters, you have a turn, and then it's their turn again, but they can't play supporters. That is going to give you a big leg up in any particular matchup. It's one that I think you need to be playing around with. Now, Monkey Dory is just a phenomenal card that everybody's going to be playing at some point or another. You're going to need a bunch of these. Because if there's a Darkness Energy attached to it, you can move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponents. It's not a Radiant Pokemon or any of that. It's just got a really nice ability, and it's one you need to bear in mind. Now, Ting Lu is one that I'm not sure is on everybody's radar, but I really think this is a card you need to have a playset in your binder ready for whenever. Because for a single fighting energy, it does 30 damage. But if there is a stadium in play, it also does 30 to all of your opponent's bench. This is probably the best spreading Pokemon we've got right now. Basic Pokemon, single energy, 30 everywhere. Getting a stadium is not that hard. I think Ting Lu is one we all need to be paying a bit more attention to. Now, Dracloak is an obvious one, honestly. Dracloak, it lets you look at the top 2 cards of your deck. One of them goes in your hand, one goes to the bottom of your deck. This isn't just for Dragapult decks. This is just generally an awesome Stage 1 draw engine, and I like this very much indeed. You need a playset of these. Most of these I'm saying 2 to 4 because it depends on how you want to build. This one is a hard you need 4 of them. And speaking of good draw engines, Tatsugiri. Tatsugiri's amazing. Tatsugiri says, if it's active, once during your turn, look at the top 6 cards of your deck, find a supporter, put it into your hand. Tatsugiri is basically busted. So yeah, no argument here. I did my top 10 the other day. I literally put this as my number 1 card in the entire set. It is one you absolutely need to have. Now, the last Pokemon on the list is Blood Moon Ursaluna, which is a weird one. You only actually need 1 or 2 of these unless you're going to build a deck around it. Because what you've got here is a Pokemon. It's got an ability whereby its attack cost is reduced by 1 for each prize card your opponent has taken. But it's 5 energy, 240, but it can't attack next turn. But it's fine. You switch in and out, it'll be fine. But the thing is, late in the game, this is like 0 energy, and you're still doing like 240 damage, which is ridiculous. This is going to see so much play in so many decks. This is going to be a one-of all over the place. Expect to see loads of it at NAIC. Make sure you've got a copy or 2 handy. Now, as we move into trainers, I remind you of my general rule here. You need 4 of everything. I'll tell you if there's any exceptions. So, accompanying Flute, which is the one whereby you look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and you get to bench any basic Pokemon you find there. Yeah, that's a pretty impactful card that could be really annoying. Bug Catching Set, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, find 2 Grass, Energy, or Pokemon. Yeah, any Grass deck is going to want to play them. I'm skipping over Caretaker. I'm not even putting it on the screen. It's terrible. Carmine lets you discard your hand and draw 5 cards, but you can use it turn 1 going first. It's not a good supporter, but it is a good supporter. Turn 1 going first, and sometimes you'll need that. Community Center lets you heal 10 damage from all of your Pokemon if you play a supporter. It's quite useful. Cook lets you heal 70 damage from your active. It's not good, but there are still some decks that are going to be willing to do that here and there. Enhanced Hammer, you probably already have if you've been around for a while, but if you don't, pick up a playset. Festival Grounds, stop special conditions, really annoying against some decks. You are gonna need this one handy. Handheld Fan lets you, it's a tool, but you get to move energy when you're damaged. It's really annoying. It's already seeing some play in Japan. It's gonna see some play here. Hassle lets you look at the top 8 cards of your deck and put 3 in your hand. It is really good for digging quite far into your deck, although you do have to have had a Pokemon KO'd the previous turn. We've got Hyper Aroma. A-Specs, obviously they're limited to 1. You will only ever need 1 of each A-Spec, just to be clear. But you will need 1 Hyper Aroma. Gets 3 Stage 1s. Great for decks that are playing Stage 1s. Jamming Tower. Turns off Pokemon tools. Yeah, that's going to be useful in some decks. Kieran is either a switch or lets you do extra damage. Either way, it's very, very good and you'll need a playset. Lana's Aid gets you back Pokemon and basic energy, non-rulebox Pokemon, to your hand. That's good. You're going to need some of those. Love Ball's a weird one for me because this could go anywhere. Because you search for a Pokemon with the same name as one of your opponent's Pokemon, so you probably don't want to play it as a 4-of, like, ever. But then by the same token, there's lots of shared support Pokemon at least, so maybe you do. I'll let you figure that one out. I'm putting it a 1 to 4. Lucian, each player shuffles their hand, puts it on the bottom of their deck and flips a coin. Heads you get 6, tails you draw 3. In a lot of decks, you're never going to want to play it. But if you don't mind going to a lower hand, or you're playing a control-style deck, Lucian can actually still be really good. Lucky Helmet, you probably have a playset, but if you don't, go and pick it up one up. Perrin lets you basically swap 2 Pokemon in your hand for 2 Pokemon in your deck. Go for it. Rhythorn lets you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and discard any number of them. Good for any cards at play or any decks at play from the discard pile. Cards that want to be in the discard pile. And then we've got, Scoop Up Cyclone. Great A-Spec. Pick up a Pokemon, play one of it. Or get one of it. Secret Box, discard 3 cards from your hand, search for a tool and a supporter and a stadium. And an item card. Make sure you've got one. Survival Brace stops you being one-hit KO'd. Make sure you've got one. Unfair Stamp puts your opponent down to a 2-card hand while you get 5 cards as long as your opponent took a KO last turn. Make sure you've got one. And then Legacy Energy as well. It is any energy but stops you giving up a prize, or at least you give up one less prize. Again, make sure you've got one. And then Boomerang Energy. If it would get discarded from an attack, it doesn't. Well, I mean, it does, but then you just reattach it. You'll need 4 of those. Some decks will want it. So there we go. That's your buy list. There's all the cards I think you need to have from the set. So now it's over to you guys. Tell me if there's any on your list that aren't on mine. Tell me if there's any on my list you think shouldn't be. Tell me anything you want to tell me in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Unknown One, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.